You ever go back to something and realize how important it was in defining what you really like? I won't use a number, and today, we're looking at Mass Effect.
When the attack came, the Marines held them off long enough for us to hide. They gave their lives to save us.
No one is saved. The age of humanity is ended. Soon, only ruin and corpses will remain.
What's wrong with your assistant?
Manuel has a brilliant mind, but he's always been a bit unstable. Genius and madness are two sides of the same coin.
Is it madness to see the future? To see the destruction rushing towards us? To understand there is no escape? No hope? No. I am not mad. I'm the only sane one left.
I gave him an extra dose of his meds after the attack.
Say goodnight, Manuel.
You cannot silence the truth. My voice must be heard.
Oh my god! What did you do?
That might have been a little extreme, Commander.
Mass Effect is a sci-fi RPG with third-person shooter combat. Alright, strap in, kids. Time for a fictional future history lesson. God, I'm a nerd. About 150 years from now, humanity discovers a cache of alien technology from a long-dead race called the Protheans. This discovery quickly advances humanity's own technology, mostly through the use of the newly discovered element Zero and its ability to manipulate mass effect fields. Soon after, Pluto's moon, Sharon, whatever, is discovered to not be a moon at all, but a frozen piece of Prothean technology known as a mass relay. This mass relay allows almost instant travel to its connected mass relay in another part of the galaxy, and it's soon discovered that an entire network of these mass relays exists. Humanity idealistically bands together under the moniker of the Systems Alliance and begins efforts to explore and colonize the stars under a rather militaristic banner. A few years later, they encounter another race, the Turians, and a relatively brief but brutal military conflict follows. The center of galactic politics, the Citadel Council, stepped in to end hostilities, and humanity found itself thrust into a multi-species, galaxy-wide society. As time passes, humanity continues to colonize and expand while seeking more political clout in this new world? Universe? Galaxy? You get it. I could talk Mass Effect history and lore literally all day because I like it, a lot, but this little exposition dump should stop me from having to stop to explain context, at least not too much, so there you go. The first Mass Effect game starts roughly 30 years later. You control a human. Commander, make up your own first name, Shepard. You get to select some background details, but from the title, you can probably tell they're involved with the military. An N7 Marine, actually. Think Space Special Forces. Best of the best. You select a class, which I'll get into later, and you can visually customize your character, which I didn't really do because I'm pretty attached to the default female Shepard's design. Whatever. As the game begins, you are sent in to investigate reports of a Prothean beacon on the human colony of Eden Prime, but a synthetic race known as the Geth are attacking the colony, and are seemingly being led by a Turian specter known as Saren. This is odd for a number of reasons. One, synthetics don't tend to associate with organic races, let alone take orders from them, and specters are individuals who operate outside the law to uphold galactic peace, reporting only to the Citadel Council. Yeah, attacking a human colony doesn't really scream upholding galactic peace. Some shit happens and Shepard interacts with the beacon only to receive a vision of something horrifying. Soon after, you head to the Citadel, the massive center of galactic civilization, to bring accusations against Saren directly to the Citadel Council. After finding proof that Saren has gone rogue and picking up a couple of amazing companions along the way, Commander Shepard is made the first human Spectre and given the task of bringing Saren to justice. There's quite a bit of importance placed on the role-playing aspect of this RPG. You make quite a few choices over the course of the game. Some of them impact how certain events play out, and others have consequences in later Mass Effect games. Save your saves, play on the same system, you can import stuff over. I'll talk more on that in my Mass Effect 2 video. There's a conversation wheel that is pretty clearly designed with controllers in mind. Mouse controls it fine too, it's just a touch awkward. I never hit the wrong option though. Usually options on the right of the wheel advance the conversation, while options on the left allow you to ask questions to better inform your decisions and provide more context. The top right option is a paragon choice, the middle right option is neutral, and the bottom bottom right option is Renegade. Paragon and Renegade are the moral alignments for this game. Instead of good or evil, Paragon choices represent heroism and compassion, while Renegade choices are more ruthless and mission-driven. No matter what, your mission and status as a Spectre remains the same, but this system contextualizes the kind of character that Shepard can be. As you make Paragon or Renegade decisions, you gain Paragon and Renegade points. At certain thresholds, you unlock new tiers of Charm or Intimidate, special conversation options on the left side of the wheel that are highlighted either in Paragon Blue or Renegade Red that allow you to avoid certain fights, get better rewards, or make NPCs see things your way. Because of this system, if you want the ability to make every choice in the game, you pretty much have to focus on one of the two extremes with most of your decisions, unless you want to use exploits or console commands. No judgment here. That said, you can deviate fairly regularly and still wind up with enough points to max Charm or Intimidate out by the end of the game. I usually played Paragon, making a few Renegade choices along the way, and I was always fine. Because of that, for this playthrough, I played Renegade, mostly, only deviating from that for reasons I'll explain in my Mass Effect 3 video. Ooh, intrigue. It won't be worth the wait to find out why. I promise it's actually kind of boring, but whatever. I can see why some people think this limits overall choice, especially in Mass Effect 2, but I think it shapes Shepard as a character, and because of that, I actually usually enjoy the system. I learned from this playthrough that if you're planning on making mostly Renegade choices, pay attention to options, because you can totally tell most side quest givers to fuck off, and you can cut off some companion conversations early. Like, I get that Renegade means you're kind of a dick, but I'm a whore for lore and character building and, like, kind of a completionist, so I had to tone that down a bit sometimes. I'd advise you do the same, especially if it's your first time playing. For real, especially with companions, it would have been nice to have a clearer distinction between cool Renegade bonding moment options and like, shut up, I hate you forever nerd, fuck you options. You fight enemies by shooting them. This is a third-person shooter after all, where you have abilities based on your class and grenades. And if you're close enough instead of shooting, you hit enemies with your gun. Your shields regenerate over time if you don't take damage for a while, but health is only restored by using a limited resource known as Metagel. You can be a soldier, letting you improve the use of all weapon types, which reduces the size of the aiming reticule and buffs damage, and gives tank-like abilities. There's the Adept, which gives you access to biotic powers, essentially space magic, mostly crowd control stuff. There's the Engineer, which gives you tech abilities, mostly specialized in taking down synthetic foes. The other three classes are each a mix of the first three. The Vanguard is a mixture of Soldier and Adept, with an emphasis on close range fighting. The Infiltrator is a mixture of Soldier and Engineer, with an emphasis on long-range fighting, and the Sentinel gives access to both biotic and tech powers at the expense of any real weapon training, though you can competently use a pistol. This was the class I took for this playthrough. Any of the classes will serve you well enough as long as you play to their strengths and use their abilities fairly regularly. There are 6 companions in the game, and though they have some stuff that you can't get as a player, they mostly fall into these class descriptions as well. There's enough enemy variety that encounters seem continually engaging, and shooting feels good enough. I do think that the game is laughably easy on normal, so for a first playthrough I'd advise playing on Veteran. I would say Hardcore, the second highest difficulty, but you can't access that until you beat the game. Though the PC version has a way around that, which I used because I played through this game like 8 times on Xbox 360. If you're worried that a higher difficulty might be too much for you, you can adjust it at any time by pausing the game, so there's no harm in at least trying the higher difficulties first. You can also pause combat at any time to issue orders to your squad, 2 companions at a time by the way, but I never found it overly worthwhile even on hardcore, though I imagine Insanity, the highest difficulty, is another issue entirely. There's a cover system, but I don't like how slowly you get in and out of cover, so I usually just crouched instead of using it properly. And sometimes physics go a bit weird. I honestly don't have too much more to say about the combat. It's not the high point of the game by any means, but it's not bad either. I never found it to be repetitive. Moment to moment, it's usually okay, with the occasional moment of tension. Perfectly serviceable, maybe a bit above average. It's really the writing and characters and world that made me adore this game. It gives context to the combat that makes it more engaging and fun than it otherwise would be. The combat itself doesn't get amazing until the sequels. Oh, and there are vehicle sections, specifically a sort of rover-type vehicle with a machine gun and cannon on top of it called the Mako. It's a bit clunky to control because it does that thing where you move in the direction you hold, which works kind of well on a controller, but I played the PC version with mouse and keyboard, so blah. That said, it's usually pretty enjoyable, actually. You can jump in it, which means you can jump over missiles, which is kind of amazing, and it's just a fun thing to change up the pace of the game. Just a little tip, the shields take for fucking ever to recharge. If you're out of combat and just sitting there waiting, save the game, then load that save, and they should be fully charged, because fuck sitting there doing nothing. I should mention, by default, kills inside the vehicle give less XP than kills on foot. When I was playing on console, I would always get on foot to finish off enemies, because I'll be damned if I'll actively deprive myself of XP. You can edit the .ini files on the PC version to change it if you're comfortable doing that kind of thing. You also get experience for doing pretty much everything. Talking to characters, finishing missions and side missions, and of course killing enemies in combat. Each time you level up, you and each of your companions gains a skill point that can be used to improve one ability, improve passive buffs, or unlock higher tiers of charm or intimidate. I always improve the conversation options first so I can make as many choices as possible because that's who I am, and I do that in pretty much every game. Also, there are locked containers that require a character with a sufficient bypass skill to open, which has a little hacking minigame thing. It's essentially lockpicking, but you know, in space, which of course was my second priority right after the conversation-based stuff. My only complaint with the system overall is that weapon accuracy is also tied into this. It feels like a very boring thing to pump upgrade points into, and moreover makes me feel like you have to level something up in order to have an actual positive experience with any weapon other than the pistol. There's a loot system, which has all the positive and negative aspects you might expect from the typical loot system. You can get new armor, weapons, biotic implants, omni tools for tech abilities, and mods for grenades, weapons, and armor. The weapons and armor vary visually, which is always nice in RPGs, and the mods usually have a very tangible effect, especially ammo mods, like you can fucking melt people with acidic type ammo. Shit's cool. As you level up, you start getting higher tiers of equipment. Pretty straightforward, but there are times where inventory management can be a pain. You either have to regularly sell or salvage what you don't want as you go, which slows the overall pace of the game, or wait until your inventory's almost full and sit down for a chunk of time and clean it out. Most of this probably could have been avoided with a sell all or salvage all button. It's so fucking simple, but whatever. After you become a Spectre and are given the mission of tracking down Saren, you're given multiple leads you can investigate. These are the main missions of the game, and are where the best content lies. Each area you go to for a main mission has its own story. Some of them have a hub area to explore, which lets you learn more about that area, and by extension, the universe of Mass Effect, and each mission completed unravels more of the plot, which is likely more complicated than simply tracking down a rogue Spectre. The level design of these areas is always clear and straightforward, and some of the best combat encounters do happen on these missions. It's also cool that you have the freedom to tackle them in the order of your choosing, more or less. There is like a proper final mission after you finish all of the other ones, and it's so cool, but like I can't show any of it because spoilers. Aside from the main story, there are a shitload of side missions you can do. The ones in hub areas tend to have quite a bit of dialogue involved. Some don't even have combat at all. They just essentially have to do with making decisions. Whereas the ones that take you outside of hub areas are almost solely combat or sometimes exploration focused. See, there's a galaxy map that lets you choose where in the galaxy you want to go. Maybe you'll hack a terminal on some planet and it'll tell you about some weird shit happening in some part of space, so you can go investigate. Or maybe you'll just enter a system and someone from the Alliance will contact you and ask you to deal with the problem. Or you'll be exploring the surface of a planet in the Mako, because that's a thing you can do on specific planets, and discover a side mission that way. It feels like a rather organic way to discover side missions to do, and really made me feel like I was exploring the galaxy and that the universe was alive, that there was stuff going on everywhere. That's not a feeling many games have replicated for me, and it's, in my opinion, incredibly engaging. The actual importance to the overall plot of these side missions varies heavily. Some of them are one-and-done type things, others have some form of consequence in the later games, and one of them is directly related to one of the main plot ties of Mass Effect 2, so yeah. There are also collectible missions, which are pretty much exactly what they sound like, sets of things to find out in the vast galaxy. You can find them by scanning planets or asteroids from the galaxy map, or by finding them on the surfaces of those planets you can go down to. If you're exploring looking for side missions, you might as well do these for the extra experience. Also, you do get minor benefits for some of them in later games, but if you miss some, it's fine, because you don't have to find all of the collectibles in the game in order to complete these missions. It's a nice touch because it means I don't have to feel like I have to rely on a guide. On top of this, there are 2 pieces of DLC. Bring Down the Sky is absolutely worth getting. It's about as engaging as the main missions the game provides, though it is a bit shorter, and it lets you interact with a species that is otherwise only mentioned in the game, the Batarians. Good shit. Heavily recommended. Pinnacle Station, on the other hand, I don't like as much. It's essentially a challenge mode. It's explained and justified in universe, which is something I appreciate, and I did go through it all the first time I played the game, but as usual, challenge modes just kind of bore me. If it's your kind of thing, it seems like one that's fairly fleshed out, but for me, The PC version of the game comes with both pieces of DLC for free, and I'm pretty sure the PS3 version does too. This universe and the characters in it, I simply adore. All of your squad mates that you can get in the game are amazing individual characters, and conversations with them can give you insight into the cultures of some of the alien races and the universe as a whole. If you want to get as many conversations out of your companions as you can, basically just go talk to all of them after every main mission, and if you want to be sure to do all of them, do the mission to find Dr. Tassoni first, and do the Vermeer mission only after you have no other main missions left to do. You can romance certain companions, which basically consists of not being a dick to that companion. Ashley will get with a dude shepherd, Caden will get with a lady shepherd, and Liara will get with either. If you want your dude shepherd to hook up with another guy, you're not going to be able to until Mass Effect 3. If that's what you want, be nice to Caden. Just saying. Alright. This hasn't really come up in one of my videos yet, so I'm gonna address it now. If a game, especially a role-playing game, especially one where you get to customize a character, is going to have romance in it, it should allow all of the romance options to get with any version of the player character you could make. A lot of people play RPGs in a self-inserty way, which is perfectly valid, but that means that developers limiting the romance options needlessly isolate some of those players. And regardless of the player's own gender and sexuality, it limits roleplay options. The only way to play a gay male shepherd in this game is to just not romance anyone, and that simply shouldn't be the case. An alternative to this that I find acceptable, though it is harder to handle it well, is when the sexuality of characters is something that's brought up in their characterization and is in some way addressed in-game in a way that adds to who each of those characters are. But that comes with the caveat of only being okay if there's at least some level of choice that doesn't isolate homosexual self-inserting players or people who want to play a gay character for whatever reason. Mass Effect 2 takes a major step back in this regard, and Mass Effect 3 is complicated with romance. There are mods that can fix this, but they usually make dialogue kind of weird in some way, and moreover could fuck up imports to later games, so I can't really recommend them. It's weird that Mass Effect handles this so poorly because most of BioWare's other franchises seem to have it down pretty well. My Lady Shepherd romanced Liara, if anyone's curious. The main thing that really keeps me invested in this world is the world itself, or I suppose I should say universe. Nearly every character encountered is interesting on some level. I even feel attached to your ship, the Normandy. As you explore the game and talk to characters, you unlock codex entries, some of which are narrated that just provide lore and information on technology. If you want that hard sci-fi information, culture and history. I'm that nerd who read every codex entry in the game and walked away fulfilled. But even if you don't want to read the codex, simply talking to NPCs can give you much of the same sensation. The companion Rex can be your means to learn about the sad story of the Krogan, who are slipping ever closer to extinction due to major events in the history of the galaxy. Tali gushes about her home and her people who were forced to live in spaceships after being exiled by the synthetic race that they created, the Geth. Everything's connected by virtue of existing in the same fictional universe. I just love it so much. Every detail builds upon the information surrounding it, and most of it comes to the forefront in one way or another by the end of the third game. I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I'll just say this. Experiencing all of this for yourself is something amazing and unique. I'm in love with this game and this franchise, and I encourage you to check it out. That said, this has been I Don't Use a Number. If you like this video, you can subscribe and maybe share it with your friends. If you're willing and able, please consider supporting me through Patreon. Keep loving what you love, and I'll see you next time with something else.